Hello guys, I need someone to do a intro for me. So if anybody can do that and give me a intro that I like and you like, personally, you like it, and I like it too, I will feature it in the videos as my intro and I'll still credit you to the intro. So, this was a one-shot that I did and I liked the one-shot, but I asked at the end of it if you guys wanted me to make it a series, and some of you said yes. So this is going to be a short series, but it's still going to be a series. Oh, actually, no, it's not going to be a short series. I'll make it a good series. So this is what if Deku was in Rainbow. Was in Team Rainbow. So before we start, yes, he's still going to be quirkless, and yes, he's going to be freaking overpowered. So I need to set some backstory for Team Rainbow. This is not canon story. Don't worry. I don't know anything about canon Team Rainbow, so it's going to be my own theory of why they started. So and this is going to be before the quirk started. So this is 10 years before the quirk outbreak, and the first person with a quirk was born, and he joined Team Rainbow, and he was a myth among the Rainbow members as the glowing man or ghost, because his exploits in Team Rainbow were legendary. That since he glowed, and he glowed very faintly when he was concentrating enough, he could look like a ghost. So he used that to his advantage to freak out the enemy before they could actually do anything. And now, present time, it's Izuku Midoriya, and he just got diagnosed quirkless. And the man, seeing potential in this quirkless little one, says that you could join the military, you could join the police force, you could join the firefighters, and you could be a medic and still be a hero that way. And Deku's fire got lit up a little bit more, and he says, I'll join the military and be a hero to everybody in this country so they don't have to deal with wars anymore. And he says, okay. So the next 10 years before he signs a thing to go into basic training, since he's 4, he's going to go into basic training when he's 14. He was working out, he was keeping up on his studies, he was still the super smart Izuku that we all know, but he was also training his butt off, and he was cannon strength when he got One for All. So he's super strong for his age, and he has high potential. And he walks into the recruitment office, and he says, I would like to join the military. I don't know what branch yet. And the recruiter says, sure, let me see your skills. And what is your quirk? And the young man in front of him said, I'm quirkless. And the recruiter immediately scowled at him and said, okay, let me see your skills. And this recruiter puts up a video camera to post on the military. He can say a quirkless kid wants to join our ranks. So he takes a video and sees that Izuku is ridiculously strong for his age. He's ridiculously fast for his age. And he's ridiculously smart for his age. And for being quirkless. And a certain high-ranking individual of the military sees this and keeps an eye on him. And has a lower branch of the military train him to be stealthy. So he is the stealthiest person in the class, and he's passed all the classes within 1 year of joining. And most recruits have to take 1.5 years. So he is advanced for his age. So this individual walks up to Izuku one day and says, well, so you're the promising being a new recruit. And Izuku looks at this man, sees his stars, and goes into attention and says, "Yes, sir, I am." And he says, "At ease, soldier." And Izuku relaxes a little bit, but still stays at attention. And he says, "I am here to see what you can do. Your goal is to sneak up on me and scare me." And Izuku said, "Sir?" And this person says, "Yes, it is. And don't call me sir. Call me Captain." And he goes, "Yes, Captain." And he says, "I will be in a training field, and you have to find me. You have to scare me, and you have to take me out." And Izuku goes, "Yes, Captain." And he walks to a certain training field, and Izuku sees which training field it is, and doesn't know why he's going to that one, but he walks into this training field, and he sits down in a chair, watching the front door. And he has a pistol in his hand, without bullets in it. He has blanks. And the person who's supposed to test him says go, and Izuku was already going, because he's like, to scare him, I need to be there before he expects me. So he got into the house through the back door, and the guy got up out of his chair and walked to the back door and was like, he just came in. Where the hell did he go? And Izuku, who's very smart for his age, knows that this man knows all the entry tricks, says, okay, so if I enter through the back door, he's probably going to check it. If I enter through the front door, he's probably sitting there. And if I enter through one of the windows, he's probably going to hear it. So he made up a plan of entering through the back door, but actually entering through the front door. So he opens the back door, steps in really loud, and then disappears, basically. Then he gets to the front door and steps in and pulls out a knife, a real knife, and he sneaks up behind the person who's testing him and starts releasing bloodlust and says, "Caught you." Yeah, and this person in front of him is shaking slightly and says, "You win. You have scared me, and you've caught me, and you infiltrated without me knowing." And Izuku says, "I have thought of every way of infiltrating this building, and I figured that you'd be sitting at the front door, so I had to move you from the front door." And the man goes, "Okay, that makes sense." And then he says, "I will talk to my supervisor to see if you are good enough, and see if he will be willing to let you join." And if I remember, no, I'm just going to make a new character. So, Sergeant General Hawk. Let's just say that. Sergeant General Hawk is the leader of the Rainbow Division of the military, and he's the only one that's trusted by every government organization in the world to run this division unpaid and fairly. So he has to test all the recruits and everybody. And keep in mind, Izuku is 15 and a half at this time. 15 and a half. So he gets a message from his recruiter that picks out promising people and says, it says, "I think we have another ghost." And Sergeant General Hawks, knowing the stories of the ghost, are like, "Ooh." And he picks up a phone and calls someone, and that person immediately runs to the Sergeant General's office and says, "I'm here, sir. What do you want?" And he goes, "I need you to take me to Japan." And he goes, "Sir, yes, sir," and opens a portal, and they both walk through, and they're in front of the military base. And the guards, who are slacking off at this point, see this portal open and get up in attention with rifles drawn. And this man walks through with his decorations on his jacket and says at ease. And they see the medals and they're like, "Sir, yes, sir." And they ask, "Can we see your identification to make sure you're who you say you are?" And he says, "Sure." And he shows them his identification, and they see that he is of the highest ranking that he can go, and that he's higher rank than the president at points in time, because he has direct authorization to go over the presidents and the ruling dictators of a certain country if needed. So they know exactly who he is, and they allow him in, and they say that the general is in his office, and if you need anybody, you should go talk to him, because we don't know where the recruitment barracks is. But the recruiter comes and walks with Izuku up to the guy and says, "This is the man who I was talking to you about after you caught me." And hearing that, the general says, "Oh, so you actually were caught instead of shot?" And he goes, "Yeah, I didn't see a single firearm on this kid." And the general looks at the kid, and says, "Oh, really?" And then he asks Izuku, "Are you good with firearms or are you bad with firearms?" And Izuku says, "I would prefer to show you instead of tell you, because in my opinion I could get better, but everybody else says I'm terrible at it." And these two gate guards, who hear the voice of the person that's talking to the general, is shivering, because they have had to go up against him in training. And the general turns around to say his goodbye to the guards, and he sees that they are shivering and that they're scared of this kid. And he walks up to them and says, "Is this kid good?" And they say, "He's the best in this entire barracks, sir." And he goes, "Oh, really?" And they say that his shots don't miss, and that he only uses knives in training. And this general asks, "What do you mean he only uses knives?" And they say, "Just that, sir. He only uses knives. If it's training against people, he doesn't use blanks, he doesn't use paintball markers, he only uses knives." And this general, his eyes widen slightly and go, "Oh, really?" So he takes off his jacket and says, "Okay." And he pulls out two knives and throws them at Deku, and Deku catches them and says, "Sir, what are we doing?" And he goes, "I want to test you right here, right now." And the gate guards are like, "Sir, you can't do this here." And he goes, "Oh, really? Just think of me as an enemy then, until this is over." And they go, "Sir, yes, sir." And they point their guns and say, "Izuku, you must take down this intruder." And Izuku's like, and since they're higher rank than Izuku, he goes, "Yes, yes," and does hand-to-hand combat with this general, and the general whoops Izuku's butt after 2 minutes of straight hand-to-hand combat. And this general is known for his hand-to-hand combat and his gun and play, his firearm play, and lasting 30 seconds is normal for people of the military, but he lasted 2 minutes. And after that, the general is just drenched in sweat. Izuku's drenched in sweat. And he says, "This was a fun spar. We should do this again." He puts his jacket back on and walks to the commanding officer of the barracks and says, "I am taking Izuku Midoriya to my department, and I will train him myself." And the commanding general looks up and sees this and goes, "Yes," and just pulls out a paper, signs it, and gives it to the general. Well, it's the transfer papers for Izuku. And Izuku is told to clean up his stuff, and be ready within 30 minutes. And he darts off at inhumanly speeds, and the general is like, what is his quirk? And the recruiter says, like I said, he's quirkless. And the general goes, that is not the speed of a quirkless kid. And the recruiter says, no, it is not. He's quirkless. And they say, okay, we're going to have him fight Ash and see if he can win. And the recruiter goes, oh God, please don't actually make him fight Ash. She's more sadistic than Midnight. And the general goes, yeah, I understand that she's more sadistic than Midnight, but still, Ash is the best person we have, including her gadget. That's freaking overpowered. And the recruiter says, yeah, I know it's overpowered, but still, Ash is gonna whoop his butt. And the general goes, yeah, I know, but I'm still gonna do it. And the recruiter goes, oh, God damn it. Even though we're brothers, you still don't listen to my advice. The general goes, hey, just because we're brothers does not mean I have to listen to you all the time, especially since you're my older brother. I'm a higher rank than you. He goes, I know, just still. So Izuku gets to the recruiter, and the recruiter says, I shall go with you for a day and then get you settled in. So the man with the portals opens up and lets Izuku through, and there's a whole team of people with warp quirks that just helps transport the rainbow unit. So these warp quirk individuals have been transferred all around the world to different cities. There's the Japanese one that warps them to Japanese areas. There's Russian one. There's a European one. There's an American one. So Izuku gets warped to the base, and all the warp people introduce themselves, saying we are the transport team for Team Rainbow. And Izuku, hearing Team Rainbow, his eyes widen and asks, wait, is this Team Rainbow's base? And he goes, no, this is your home from now on. And he says, but I'm quirkless and I can't fit in here. And he goes, yes, you're quirkless, and no, you can't fit in here. And he says, Ash, why don't you come in here? And he says this with his quirk, which is like President Mike's, but he can use it without a microphone in front of him or something to help control it. So he just has a slight increase. And Ash runs in really quickly and says, yes, sir. And he says, you must fight this kid. And Ash sees this little kid and says, sir? And Ash at this point is 20, 25 area, and he says, you heard me right, you must fight this 14-year-old, or you're 14, right? And Izuku goes, no, sir, I'm 15 and a half. And he goes, you must fight this 15-year-old kid. And Ash says, sir, yes, sir. And she takes him to the sparring rink, and they hop in, and Ash takes off her metal gloves and takes off her vest, and Izuku takes off his shirt, and Ash sees abs. He doesn't have a 6-pack. He doesn't have an 8-pack. He has a 10-pack. So Ash sees his abs, and I was like, the hell did you do? And Izuku goes, I've just been working out for the last 10 years of my life. Well, 11 years now, actually. And Ash says, okay, and let's start. So they start sparring, and 20 minutes later, they finally finish, and the general was watching the entire thing and says, wow, he is good. And Ash is currently on the ground, beaten up, and Izuku's just standing over her, They're just tired. And he says, "Is that good enough, sir?" And he goes, "Yes, that is good enough. Now I need to see your gunplay." And Izuku is handed a fully automatic Vector, and everybody's watching without anybody using quirks, and except for Glass, who's watching through a video camera and is watching with his quirk activated too, because he's recording it and watching with his quirk, and he sees the bullets fire. And Izuku is moving around a little, but what no one else sees, and the general doesn't see this, but there's only one hole in the entire target. And that's on someone's head. That's on the head. It's only one hole in the entire target. And Glass says, "General," oh, it's noon, says, "General, he's good." And he says, "What do you mean? There's only one hole." And he says, "Yes, that's expected with the way he held his gun." And he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You know how after 10 minutes I can unload a whole mag in a target 10 miles away?" And he goes, "Yeah, and there's only one hole." He goes, "Yeah, that's what just happened." And the general's eyes widen, going, "Show me the video." So they use the slow-mo camera, and they see that the bullets are following a specific spot the entire time. And he says, "I could get better." And they go, "The hell? I think the only problem you have is you're doubting yourself too much." And the general picks up a Vector that's fully automatic and says, "I've been practicing my entire life, and this is what I can do." And he shoots, and it's a slightly bigger hole, and it looks like it's a little beaten up on the sides, because he shoots basically in the same area, but he can't shoot perfect. And he says, "I shot in the same area like you did, but I can't make it through the same hole as much as you do." And Izuku, eyes widen, saying, "So I'm good with guns?" And he goes, "You're not just good with guns, you're the best here with guns, besides Glass." And he points to the guy with the face mask on, because he never takes the face mask off unless he's eating. And he says, I'm the best with guns. I can't be beaten with guns unless you can shoot 10 shots into a target 10 miles away with a Beretta that's powerful enough to do that." And he goes, "Yeah, I can. Is that not normal?" And all their eyes widen, and Glass goes, "No, that's not normal." So Izuku goes, "I can. You mean that target all the way over there?" And they're like, "Are you sure you don't have a quirk?" And he goes, "I've been working on my eyesight since I was little, and I've been training everything since I was little." And they go, "Okay, what are you?" And he goes, "I'm human." "What else?" And they go, "You're not human. You're definitely not human. Because if you were human, then you wouldn't be able to do this stuff. And you wouldn't have a 10-pack. And he goes, I'm human." And that's all he can say, because he's confused at what they're asking him. And he's still doubting himself, because he doesn't think he's that good. So we skip, as he's 15, we skip 2 years, and there is now rumor of the Rainbow Team having a new leader called Ghost. And there's also rumors that Ghost is quirkless. And we go over to the Rainbow base, and they are yelling, "Ghost, get in here!" And all of a sudden, a person appears out of nowhere, and he says, "Sir, yes, sir, what is it?" And he says, "You're going to go to UA in a year." And he goes, "Sir, but why?" And he goes, "Because you're going to teach them." And he goes, "What do you mean, sir?" And he goes, "You're going to teach them how to be true heroes, so we don't have to put targets on their heads when we go to those towns. And he goes, sir, yes, sir. And he's like, is that all, sir? And he goes, yeah. Oh. And then he calls in Japan and a warp gator, and he says, you need to go and visit because I'm giving you a day off. And so Izuku leaves and visits his mother, who hasn't seen him for 3 years. And he says, hi, Mom, I'm back. And Inko, noticing it's actually Izuku, runs, hugs him, and says, we need to tell Mitsuki and Bakugo. And Izuku, not liking Bakugo in this one, and actually owning up to his feelings about the people he doesn't like, says, okay, we can tell Aunt Mitsuki. And she goes, don't you mean Bakugo too? And he goes, yeah, sure. And he goes to his room. He changes his clothes out of the military clothes he was just wearing, and he's in his street clothes. And hold on, I'll be right back. And he's wearing this. He walks out of his room, and his mother sees what he put on instead of what he normally put on before he left, and asks, is that really what you want to wear? And he says, yes. And out of instinct, he says, yes, ma'am. And she goes, sweetie, you can call me Mom. And he goes, sorry, it's instinct. And she goes, okay. So they go over to Mitsuki's and Bakugo's, and Bakugo sees Izuku and is like, who the hell are you? And Mitsuki slaps him in the back of the head and saying, that's Izuku. And he goes, no. Izuku was wimpy. And Izuku pulls a smile out like that and tightens one of his gloves and says, you want to fight? And Bakugo goes, yeah, it's definitely not Izuku. And he goes, I'll show you it's me if you want to fight. And so he says, sure, let's have a spar. And Izuku goes, spar, let's have a spar. And he starts to get a maniacal laughter going. And when the spar starts, he goes straight face. He stops laughing, he stops smiling, he just goes straight face. And he then pulls out a blunt knife that doesn't do any damage when it hits somebody. And he starts flipping it in the air like a professional, because he is a professional at knives. And he gets in his stance and says, you ready? Bakugo's like, whatever. And he's in a casual stance, not prepared for a fight. And all of a sudden, Izuku moves ridiculously fast and basically disappears from sight. And Bakugo's like, wait, what? Because Izuku has been training the last 2 years 10 times harder than he has in the last 10 years he was before joining Team Rainbow. So he's super fast, and he's very hard to see when he's running. And all of a sudden he shows up behind Bakugo and does a sleeper and knocks Bakugo out. He's like, that wasn't a spar. That was just an annoying pest I had to stomp. And Bakugo wakes up like 10 minutes later and is like, the hell happened? And Izuku says it's what happens when you challenge me to a fight. If you're not part of my division, and he just says division, you are weak and I can easily crush you. And Bakugo says, what do you mean division? He goes, I am part of the military, remember? I went into the military. And Bakugo, remembering what happened when Izuku left, his mom's like, I'm worried for Izuku. And a flashback to when Izuku left, I'm worried for Izuku. And Bakugo goes, what are you worried about that nerd for? And she goes, first off, his name is Izuku, and second off, he's going into the military. And the military is hard for anybody, including people with quirks. And Bakugo goes, he's going to get chewed up and spit out, and he's going to come back crying. And now he snaps back to reality, and he sees the Izuku in front of him, and Izuku's smiling like this, being like, I have been on 10 missions already, and I've successfully did all those missions solo. And I'm the captain of my own squad in my division. And they ask, where are you stationed? And he goes, I'm stationed here in Japan. And they go, what do you mean you're stationed here? We've never seen a military base around here. And he goes, oh, yeah, my division is stationed everywhere in the world at the same time. So it's kind of confusing. And them not knowing about Rainbow, Team Rainbow, they go, okay, and give him a weird look. And he starts to, what would he start to do? Now let's skip the weekend, and his general walks through and says, so you're going to do the special entrance exams. And Izuku says, what do you mean special entrance exams? And he goes, you're going to the entrance exams today. And he goes, the entrance exams are tomorrow. And he goes, not for Team Rainbow. And he goes, oh, yes, sir. And he goes to UA, and Bakugo sees him walking to UA, and he asks, oi, nerd, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm going to the entrance exams. And Bakugo's like, those are tomorrow. And he goes, yeah, I know. And he continues walking, and he arrives at UA, and he's greeted by Nezu and his commander-in-chief. And the Prime Minister of Japan, I think it's Prime Minister, welcomes him and says that I've gotten you a special entrance exams because the entrance exams that UA originally has are too easy. And Deku, who's met the Prime Minister before, says, thank you, sir. I'm honored by your consideration, and I will try my hardest to beat these entrance exams. So the entrance exam starts with a test that only Deku could solve. Not even Nezu can solve it. Because it was put together by Ash, IQ, Hibana, the hacker girl. It was put together by them, and Nezu got a 10 out of 100, and Deku gets a 100 out of 100, and Nezu looks at this and is like, holy crap, he's smart. And he's like, are you sure he doesn't have a intelligence quirk? And the commander-in-chief says, yes, I've had him go to the quirk doctor 3 times already to make sure that he didn't have a dormant quirk and so on. And he goes, okay. And so he goes to the practical exam, and it's a hostage rescue with the heroes being the villains, and they're not ready for what's going to happen. Just saying that now. The only one who's partially ready is Aizawa. So we start the hostage rescue, and Izuku, who has paintball markers next to a few knives that have the ability to release paint when they hit somebody, stands up and picks up the knives and walks to the building. And Nezu, who's telling him to gear up, asks, what are you doing? Aren't you going to pick up a gun? And he goes, no, I prefer knives. And Nezu says, isn't there a legend about someone who only used knives? And the leader of the group says, yeah, and his name was Ghost. Can you guess what his code name is? And Nezu goes, Ghost, and he goes, no. His code name is The Ghost. And everybody called him Deku when he was little, so we call him on missions Deku or Ghost. But everybody at the base calls him The Ghost, and whenever they're talking to him, they call him Deku. So it gets kind of confusing when you're talking about one person, if you haven't been around him for a while. And Nezu says, but he couldn't have the same abilities as the Ghost. And he goes, oh, hell no. He doesn't. He's quirkless, for God's sakes. And Nezu goes, then how is he going to sneak up on an Aizawa, the Power Loader, Midnight, um, Vlad, and he lists all these pro heroes that are really good at noticing things around them, and he goes, just watch and see. He sees the roster of heroes that are now villains in this scenario, and he says, okay, I have to take care of Aizawa first, then I have to take care of Midnight because she has the most dangerous quirk for me. But then he goes, oh wait, I have a gas mask. Never mind, I can take care of Midnight last because she just has a whip. I have to take care of Vlad because he can bound me to the ground. I have to take care of Cement Toss, Power Loader, and then he lists in order of what heroes he has to take care of. And then the last one, who's Midnight. So he walks into this building and he knows that they can't see him because he shut off the cameras from outside because he turned off the power to the building. And the lights are off, so they put on the night vision that they have apparently stolen, but they were actually given. And he's like, okay, time to activate mine. So he sits in the corner of a room, and there's night vision cameras that are hooked up to the monitoring room, and so on. So they can watch what's happening, and they see him sitting in a corner with his eyes closed. And Nezu asks, what is he doing? And the general says, shh, just watch. This is the best part. And Izuku opens his eyes, and his eyes seem to change. And Nezu says, I thought you said he was quirkless. And he goes, he is. But he's also a genetic engineer, a genetic scientist for our division. Nezu goes, wait, what? He goes, yeah. He's perfected the ability to genetically engineer creatures and genetically modify people. And he's the only one who can do it because it requires the steadiest hand that you could ever find. And he is the only one capable of doing so. And Nezu looks at him and says, then what is he connected to? And he says he's connected to a cat. So he has the eyesight of a cat, and he is sadly the downside of having catnip all over his room. And Nezu goes, I don't think that's normal. And he goes, no, it is not. He has the eyesight of a cat, but he has the downside of catnip all over his room. That's the only thing he needed, is night vision. So he has no electronics on him, so if someone can see electricity or sense electricity, he has no electronics. If someone could sense body heat, he has ways to diffuse that. And if someone has night vision, he has ways to use his own night vision. And Nezu goes, damn! First off, he beat my IQ. Now he has night vision. What the hell is he? And the general says he is the ghost. And Nezu chuckles at this, saying, apparently, and just continues watching. And Izuku, who focused on his eyes to change them and convert them to the cat-like eyes that he genetically modified for himself and implanted. He does not have a quirk. His eyes are like cat eyes. So when he's in sunlight, he has normal sized pupils, but when he's in darkness, he focuses on his eyes enough and they change into cat-like eyes. So they have... Yeah. I was about to say they have electronics in him, but he doesn't have any electronics on him. So he surgically implanted them and made them work for him. That's what he did. So he does not have a quirk. So if you guys say, oh, he now has a quirk, he doesn't. He genetically modified some eyes to fit in a human eye socket, and then he put them in his eye socket and surgically engineered or surgically implanted them so they work. He's smart enough to do that. So it's now on to the fight with Aizawa. Because Aizawa is the best person to fight another stealth person with. So he walks up behind Aizawa and he sets off a flash grenade. And Nezu's like, what the hell? You just alerted them that they were there. And the guy says, yes, but he also blinded them. And Nezu goes, oh yeah. So they take off their goggles and shut their eyes, and Aizawa gets a chokehold put on him, and he gets knocked out and dragged away. And in this, Aizawa and Midnight are together and a couple. So Midnight, when she was able to see, and she turned her night vision back on and looked through it and couldn't find Aizawa. And so she yelled Aizawa, and no response. And then all of a sudden they hear choking from Vlad King, and they look towards Vlad King, and he's gone. So they start freaking out, being like, what the hell's going on? And don't worry, he's knocking them out. He's not actually killing them. So it's now time for the last fight, which is Midnight versus Izuku. And Midnight was told, no matter what, you can't give up. You can't give up, and if you have to, and you're too scared to continue, you can surrender, and he will take you into custody. And they're told the rules of this exchange, that he won't kill, but he knows how to kill, and if he hits you in a kill shot, you act like you're dead on the ground. And he did that for Vlad King. He slit his throat. Vlad King acted like he was choking, and he fell on the ground and disappeared before they could find where Vlad King was. And he did that for a lot of them. And then all of a sudden, it's Midnight left, and Izuku pops up behind her with a knife to her throat, saying, do you surrender? And she goes, yes. And he says, okay. And he's currently in this uniform. He doesn't have a 6 on his chest. He can't show he's not showing his face. Well, he is showing his face because he allows them to see his face. Only the teachers, though, but not the students. He's showing his face. He has a helmet on. He has a gas mask on. And he has a full black uniform on with a Kevlar vest. So he has 120 pounds on him in gear without the guns, because he never takes guns. He only takes knives. So he kind of looks like Stain a little with all those knives. So she gave up, and she left the area, or she sat on the ground and let him put fake cuffs on her, and then he walked over to the bomb and started defusing it. It's a fake bomb. It's just a timer that will beep if he cuts the wrong wire or does something different. He pulls out one of IQ's gadgets that she just invented to help defuse bombs and to basically defuse them without actually cutting anything. And he holds it over, and it slowly does its work. And when it's done, it goes beep, and then he turns off the timer, saying it's done. I win. And Aizawa, who woke up a little bit after he was knocked out, saw that everybody besides him and his wife were hit in a kill shot. And he asks, what the hell happened? And Nezu says, you were all taken out by Ghost. And he's known as Ghost in this scenario, and they all go, you mean the kid? And since Nezu never told them his code name, says yes. He never told them his real name either. And he bows, says, I am Ghost, and I am the only one who can successfully defuse a bomb situation without taking any lives or without having any casualties of surrounding civilians. And they ask, what do you mean by surrounding civilians? And he goes, if there's a hostage situation, Fuse easily can kill the civilian. Everybody else can easily mistake the civilian. I can't, because I have to get right next to them and cut them in the throat with a knife. And so Aizawa looks at him and says, you're way too cheery about this. And he goes, yeah. And he walks up to Nezu and says, on request, I would like to wear this to class because I do not like showing my identity to anybody that I don't trust. And Nezu says, sure, because he respects the Ghost name and the Rainbow team. So it is now the first day of UA, and he walks up to Katsuki, and not in uniform, but he walks up to Katsuki and says, did you get into UA? And he said, yeah. And he said, there's this one kid that apparently got a harder test than us, and his name is Ghost. And Deku, who's known as Deku to Katsuki, says, I'm sorry, but me, Izuku Midoriya, has failed the entrance exams that I was given. And Katsuki is like, damn extra. But then Izuku goes around the side of UA. Well, after he walked in with Bakugo, and Bakugo didn't notice it, he walked around the side of UA and got into his military gear. And he gets a room that looks like a barracks in UA, so he doesn't have to leave ever. So he walks into class in his full getup, and he has a pair of goggles on, shade goggles, and he has a face mask on and a voice changer. And he walks to the back of the class and sits down, and Ida walks up to him and says it's very disrespectful not to wear the uniform. And Izuku says, I am part of the Rainbow team. I am not here to be respectful. I am here to get my job done and go back and go home. He calls the Rainbow base home instead of with his mother. And Ida goes, okay, okay. And he's stuttering away, and I'm thinking of who the ship should be. I know it's going to be a person on Team Rainbow. So, it's now time for Izuku to do the ball throw, and he still has his gear on, so it looks like he's going to be baking alive, but he's used to these temperatures. So he takes the ball from Aizawa, and Aizawa says, use your quirk if you have one, and Izuku says, yes sir, because they have to keep a facade that he is part of Rainbow Team and he has a quirk in UA. And he throws it, and it goes far. It doesn't make wind pressure, it doesn't break the sound barrier, it just goes really far. It goes 564 meters. And since Izuku was never around Bakugo for a long extended period of time, Bakugo got 600-ish meters. And he has a little bit more of a cocky attitude towards anybody who's weaker than him, so he goes up to Ghost and says, huh, you extra. And he says, tomorrow we are going to have a fight, and I'm going to beat you without spilling blood. And he says this with people thinking he has a straight face, which he does. And he said this in an emotionless tone. So, we skip to the next day after the results were posted of Izuku getting second, Bakugo getting first. And it's now the All Might heroes versus villains, and it's a 3-man team versus Ghost. And they're like, does that even consider to be fair? And All Might says, I have firsthand witnessed his abilities. And he shivers at this, saying abilities, and everybody's like, what is his quirk? And everybody's like, we're going to see his quirk now. And so they all go to the viewing box, and all the cameras switch to a night vision mode, and they're like, why does this happen? And he goes, this only happens when the power goes out in the building. And they go, what do you mean the power went out? And he goes, Ghost has cut the power to the building. And they look, and they see Ghost slowly entering the building. And All Might goes out of the intercom and says, bomb goes off in 10 minutes. And Izuku looks up and gives a thumbs up and starts going a little bit faster. And he's right outside the door to Bakugo and Todoroki's area. But he slipped right past Bakugo because Bakugo still is the complete and utter jag he was. So it's Ida, Bakugo, and Todoroki all on the same team. And Todoroki has used his fire to create light. So there's a little bit of light in the center of the room, and Izuku, feeling that there's something wrong in this room, he slowly opens the door, and no one notices it because he slowly opens it super quietly. And he gets a sadistic grin on his face, and he pulls out the paintball knives like Kratos would with the cross blades. And then he flips them around to where they're facing downwards when you hold them. And he gets ready for a fight. He walks up behind Ida, and Ida has his mouth covered, and he tries to flail. But he gets his throat slit, and he knows that if you get hit with a kill shot, you're not to move. And he felt the kill shot, and he's like, oh god. He's super effective, and All Might notifying the other hero or other villains saying, Tenya Ida has been eliminated. And he says that over the intercom, and Izuku being like, what the hell, dude? And flips him off because he was trying to do this stealthy. And Todoroki turns around to where Ida was, and Ida's gone. And it's on to Todoroki, and Bakugo hears that and is like, what the hell is that, or are those extras doing? And he runs back to the room, and he's popping explosions on the way to lighten up the hallways. And now he's in the room, and he looks for Todoroki and sees Todoroki's gone. And he looks for Ida, and he sees Ida is not there, like All Might said, and he walks up to the bomb, places his hand on it, and the bomb tips over. And he sees that it's just a cardboard cutout of a bomb. And he's like, what the hell is this? And Izuku, who's behind him with his voice changer still, says, your end. And stabs him with a fake knife in the throat. And Bakugo, feeling this, is like, damn it. And he gets really pissed off and says, I want a rematch. And he goes, no. And everybody in the observation booth is like, the hell is this kid? And they're like, he never activated a quirk. And All Might says he doesn't have one. And Aizawa, who is sleeping in the room, hears All Might say he doesn't have one, wakes up and says, that was confidential. All Might, you've overstepped your boundaries. You've been suspended from a teaching position for 2 weeks. And All Might, forgetting that it was confidential, is like, crap. So he walks out, and everybody was like, what do you mean it's confidential? And he says only he or the general that he works under can say what he does and who he is. And I will ask him to explain what he does and what his codename means when he gets back. A minute later, Izuku walks into the room, and Aizawa says, I'm sorry, but you've been labeled as quirkless in school. And he says that it's okay. I was going to have to tell them anyway. So he says, will you tell them, or do you want me to? And Izuku says, I'll tell them. And he says, my name is Ghost, or some people call me the Ghost, but my abilities are gunfire. I can easily use guns. I can easily use knives. I have great hand-to-hand capability, and I am faster than a normal person. I'm also stronger than a normal person, but I prefer to be in the dark and slow and steady. And then he points at the computer, the monitors, and say, that is bright right this second. And he pulls down his goggles, and he shows the cat-like eyes and puts them back. And he says, I'm also a genius in bioengineering, in science, and bio or genetic modification. And they look at him and say, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, I'm a genius in genetic modification, and I have made a genetic alteration to myself with my eyes so I can see in the dark. And at this point, everybody looks at him like he's crazy. And then he says, I've also been a prodigy for everything in my entire life, so I've risen up in the ranks of the Rainbow Unit. And Aizawa, knowing what the Rainbow Unit is and does, says the Rainbow Unit is a elite unit that only can be controlled by the governments if all governments agree to send them out. And they're our first response to any high priority hostage situations or any high priority threats. And they look at Izuku and they ask, then who else is in your team? And he goes, I'm the lone wolf of the group, but my squad consists of 10 people, and I shall not give their names out, but I can give their code names. One's Castle, one's Fuse, one's Ash, one's Doc, one's Rook, Vigil, Capcan. So I have Fuse, Doc, Rook, Vigil, Capcan, Ash, Fuse, Doc, Rook, Vigil, Capcan, Ash, Castle, Glass, Recruit. And they ask, there's someone named Recruit? And he goes, hold on. And Buck. And he goes, yes, there is one person named Recruit, and he is a highly decorated officer that prefers to be unknown by anybody, and that he is a very skilled person with any gun type and any weapon you give him. And we don't even know what his quirk is. Hell, he maybe even quirkless. And they look at Izuku and say, what? And he goes, I'm the leading commander of that squad, and I am the solo unit if needed. And they ask, when were you deployed? And he goes, do you remember 6 months ago when the Prime Minister was kidnapped? I was the one who sent them. And Aizawa goes, yeah, that wasn't public. And he goes, oh, it wasn't? I thought it was public. And he goes, none of your exploits were public. That's how high of a seal they were put on. And he goes, oh, so I get only the seal jobs. And he goes, yeah, you do. So that's why they don't know who the Rainbow Unit is. Or you. He goes, oh, okay. And all of them are just like, the Prime Minister was kidnapped? And he goes, oh yeah, it was a militia group, if I remember correctly. It was some random villain named Wolfgang, and he kidnapped the Prime Minister while he was on Island. I was sent in, and I had to eliminate the villains and rescue the Prime Minister without a single loss or a single casualty. And I was going to send in my team, then I was told not a single casualty, and I'm like, civilians might be caught in it if there's a casualty. If there's supposed to be no casualties, I have to go in alone. So I went in alone, and I easily took down all the villains, and they were like, wait, you're the one who killed Wolfgang? We were told it was a vigilante. And he goes, no. When was Wolfgang reported again? And Aizawa says, a month ago. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right. I kind of tortured him for a month. And they all look at him and they go, wait, what? And he goes, yeah, I'm not going to be a hero. I'm just coming here to make sure that you are true heroes. And I'm showing you what happens if you are not a true hero. And he then puts up a video of Native with Izuku in his full combat gear and mask on, laughing maniacally. And they go, wait, what are you doing? And he goes, just watch. And an hour torture session before Native finally passed out from pain. And after that, everybody stayed away from Ghost. So now we skip to the USJ, and Ghost was given authorization to use lethal force if needed to protect the students. And he goes, yes, sir, to his commanding officer, who gave him the lethal force if needed. And what they didn't expect was Ghost to bring in a machine gun. And a what he called a sausage. If anybody has played Rainbow, you know what the sausage is. And if you haven't played Rainbow, play Rainbow. It's a really good game. Really hard, but really good. And he called it a sausage, but it was apparently a shotgun that had a semi-auto firing rate. And they didn't know what a semi-auto rate was. And he said, you don't need to worry about it. And he had a FAMAS on him. And he had a M1911. A Beretta M1911. And he was kitted out. And he said that his gear is probably heavier than all of your equipment combined. And so they asked him, did he go into the military? And he said, I've been bullied since I was quirkless, and I was told by the doctor that I could be anything. I wanted to be a hero, and I was thinking, why don't I go into the military and protect people from the shadows like some of the heroes do? And they go, cool. And Bakugo, hearing this, is like, no, only the nerd had that mentality. And he goes, what are you calling a nerd? I can whoop your ass. And Bakugo, hearing that, is like, I'm not calling you a nerd. I'm calling a friend I had in elementary school a nerd. And he goes, oh, okay. I understand now. And Tsuyu asks, how hard do you train every day? And Ghost says, oh, that's easy. I train 50 times harder than a normal person. And they look at him and go, what do you do? And he says, you know the length of the school from one end to the other end? And they go, no. Well, the school is roughly 10 square kilometers. And they look at him going, how do you know that? And he goes, I run 40 kilometers in one lap. I run that 10 times a day. Full speed, the entire time. And they look at him like he's crazy. And he goes, oh, that's not even the best part. I do 2,000 push-ups, 2,000 sit-ups, and 2,000 crunchies. Not crunchies. 2,000 squats. And they look at him like he just grew another head. And he goes, and I then go to the firing range that they specifically installed underneath the dorms that only I can get into with a code that is only known by the Rainbow unit to get in and start using my machine guns. And it's soundproof, so you guys don't hear any of the gunfire. And now they just passed out, fainted, not knowing what to say. And they get to the USJ, and Izuku's standing at the entrance, at the top of the stairs, keeping an eye on everything. And he sees the portal open, and he readies one of his guns. He readies his FAMAS, and he puts it in semi-auto. And Aizawa, seeing this, says, 13, protect the kids. And he says, Ghost, do you need my help? And he goes, no, I have lethal force authorized. And Aizawa, hearing that, goes, okay, I'll go check the other areas. And he says, okay, I'll finish up here and then I'll go and see if there's anybody left. And Kuragiri, without noticing, walks through the portal and gets shot in the head. After all the villains were brought into this area and they heard a gunshot and they're like, wait, what? Heroes aren't supposed to have guns unless it was Snipe that's here. And then another villain got shot in the head. And then they started all getting shot in the head. Then they hear someone reload. And they look up and they finally see who's been shooting them. And they see this man in full black tactical gear with a FAMAS in his hands and a gun on his back and a pistol on his side. And they're like, who the hell are you? And he just reloads his FAMAS and starts shooting again. And so all the villains, one of them has a hardening quirk, so he hardens and then runs at Izuku, trying to stop him from shooting people. And Izuku sees that he has a hardening quirk, so he drops his FAMAS, which has a strap on it, and he pulls out his sausage and shoots him right in the head, which completely blows out his brains. And he drops his sausage and then starts shooting them again, and they're like, he was supposed to be resistant to bullets. What the hell is he? And everybody starts getting picked off one by one, and they start running at Izuku, trying to overload him with people, when he pulls out his Beretta and a knife, and drops his FAMAS and his sausage, after unloading their clips, and starts popping people in the head with the Beretta, and then slicing people's throats. And he's doing this so efficiently that Aizawa sees him and thinks that he's dancing. And it's not the dance, oh, I'm flowing through the enemies. No, it's the I'm breakdancing kind of dance. And so he finally gets to Shigaraki, who is scratching his neck saying, you cheated, you cheated, you cheated. And he drops the clip in his Beretta and he says, oh, I'm all out of bullets. So he drops his Beretta and he readies 2 knives and says, you want to dance? And Shigaraki said, he's Nomu, kill him. But Kuragiri died when Shigaraki said, bring out the Nomu. He was opening the portal and saying, yes, master. Then Kuragiri died from the shot to the head. And Shigaraki looks over and doesn't see the Nomu and is like, what the hell? And he looks over at Kuragiri and sees that he's dead on the floor. And he says, do you surrender? And Shigaraki says, never! And tries to touch Ghost. Ghost then gets up or gets out of the path of his hand and cuts his hand off and says, oh, so your quirk is based on your hands. So he cuts off Shigaraki's other hand and then basically puts a knife to his neck and says, do you surrender now? And Shigaraki says, never! And tries to headbutt Izuku and acts like a child. And Izuku just easily uses the back of his knife and slits Shigaraki's throat. And the newscasters come in and they see this black suited man with a certain symbol on his shoulder. And they go like, hey, cut the cameras. We can't. And this is one of the people who know what the Rainbow Team does, and all these students are just standing at the top of the place, seeing this kid, their age, covered in blood and has 2 bloody knives in his hand, and he sheathed them back and picked up his Beretta, holstered that, went up the stairs, picked up his FAMAS, put that on, picked up his sausage, put that on, and started walking out. When the newscasters saw him, they're like, cut the cameras, we can't say this. And the police officers heard this and they look at the kid that just came out, and Naomasa, who is a friend of the generals for the Rainbow Unit, says, okay, this situation is settled, we just need to go clean it up. And they're like, what do you mean it's settled? We just got here. And he goes, the elite unit has already swept through here. We don't need to be here any longer. And Naomasa goes up to Deku and says, you must be Ghost. And he goes, yes, sir. And who may you be? And he says, I am Naomasa, Suguchi Naomasa, and I think his name is Suguchi. You guys need to tell me if I'm right or wrong. And Naomasa says, I am a friend of the general's, and he salutes saying, sir, yes, sir, and he's like, at ease. I'm just a friend, I'm not that close to him. And Izuku says, oh, okay. And so he relaxes and says, I've spent 123 shells, and I accidentally didn't reload my FAMAS when I first started. And he says, what do you mean reload your FAMAS? And he picks up the gun and says, I was shooting this morning in the gun range, and I forgot to reload the clip that was in it. So I didn't have a full clip when I started shooting. So that's why it's a weird number and not actually an even number. And now Masa goes, okay, I'll put that in my report and send it to him to send you more ammunition. And he goes, no, I have a ammo printer at the school. And now Masa says, what do you mean an ammo printer? He says, one of these students knows how to create ammunition with her quirk, and apparently she has a crush on me, and she's never seen my face. And now Masa goes, oh, okay. And we go back to the dorms, and everybody's in the dorms, and Momo says, how many rounds did you spend? And he goes, I've spent 123 rounds out of the 300 rounds that I'm allowed on campus. 100 per weapon. No. 50 for the Beretta, 50 for the sausage, and 200 for the FAMAS. And she goes, okay, and she starts printing the ammunition, and she puts them in the box and gives it to Izuku, and Izuku takes it to the gun range and sets it down and says thank you. And the gun range has been open because they now know about it. He leaves it open until he starts using it, and they all walk in there, but they don't know the combination to the gun safe that's in there. And he makes sure that the door is open when he's not in there, but the gun safe is shut with all the ammunition and bullet and guns in there. So now it's time for the sports festival, and he is the guard for the sports festival. He's not actually in the sports festival. So he's patrolling around the area, and all these students are like, why isn't he joining? And they're like, and everybody else is like, we don't want him to join. All the class 1A people, sorry about the burp. And they go, why? They go, because he's too overpowered. And all these students in school know him as Ghost and nothing else. Oh. Okay. I'm going to finish this in a minute. So I have to call my mother. Parents. So it's the sports festival. It starts, and the obstacle race is over, and all of a sudden the stadium goes boom, and Izuku goes in full fight mode. And I'm going to end it there. If you guys like this one, please think about liking this. If you guys like my content at all, and I'm going to be restarting some of my series. I'm sorry if you guys like them, but I'm going to restart them by making a one-shot version, and then I'm going to turn that one-shot version into a full version if you guys say to continue them, or make them a full series, and I'll ask you at the beginning and the end. So this is the first series that I'm doing that is started as a one-shot, and I'm going to continue this. And I'm going to definitely continue the Demon Deku. That I just started that today, and I'm restarting all my series today. So I'm sorry if you guys like my other series. I really am, but I'm going to be restarting, and if you guys like how I'm taking the other series, you can tell me in the comments, and then tell me to continue if you want me to continue. But if you don't, then just don't say anything. And if you like the video if you want. If you like my content, like I said earlier, subscribe. And if you want to stay up to date with my content, which is very easy to do if you just click that all bell button. So talk to you guys later. Goodbye.